Good morning and welcome to this, the first press conference of Reform UK. Now this is a difficult time. It's a worrying time for all of us. And firstly, I just want to pay my thanks, my tribute to all of the key workers across the whole of the UK, in particular the nurses, the doctors, the surgeons that are working so hard. But we have to have hope. We have to look forwards. So I want you please to imagine a pint glass full of common sense mixed with a healthy dose of gut instinct. Then imagine you're a retired medic. You want to help end this terrible COVID crisis by volunteering to give vaccines to the public. But some bright spark of a civil servant says you need 21 forms completed covering relevant issues like terrorism, like carrying heavy loads and equality training. That is the application of zero common sense. And that's one simple example why the need to reform the way the UK is run and managed is greater than ever. And that's why we believe there's an important role for Reform UK as a political party to encourage common sense, to encourage open, fresh, fair debate. And as a United Kingdom, we should be excited by the huge opportunities that lie ahead of us. And as a union, we should be enthusiastic of the newly restored freedoms that we can take advantage of. Instead, we're all locked up. Many people are unnecessarily terrified. Workers in the private sector are losing their jobs in their hundreds of thousands. Entrepreneurs losing their businesses. The self-employed have been abandoned. And our children are caged up, locked up, learning online, possibly until September. This is Boris's bleak Britain. And we can change this. We can do so much better. Firstly, we must reform our approach to COVID. We have to learn to live with it. It's here with us forever. We must reform our economy to create faster growth across the whole of the United Kingdom. By cutting taxes, we create faster growth. By cutting unnecessary regulation, we create faster growth. And by cutting the mountain of wasteful government spending, we create faster growth. And common sense says that if we have faster growth, then we will have better wages, higher wages, and more to invest in better health, leading to longer lives. But my gut instinct tells me that when a Prime Minister appoints his own brother and his own big personal donors to the House of Lords, the people know it's time for reform. And common sense tells us that it's mad to spend 100 million quid of our own hard-earned cash on diversity at the BBC. The failings over COVID in the public sector show we must reform the way that our civil service operates. Imagine spending over £200 million of our money on building new hospitals in a matter of days and weeks, but then not using them because you forgot to contact the 30,000 plus retired staff, medics who are keen to help. So the staff never get contacted, the hospitals never get used. And then you think, well, let's rip the hospitals down in secret, overnight, hoping that people won't notice. My gut is telling me, my gut is rumbling, it's telling me that bungling bureaucrats have long lost their pint of common sense. Now we must also address our approach to the union of the four nations that make up the United Kingdom. And today I want to focus on Scotland. The positive reality is that we've all lived our lives together as a union, as descendants and children of the union. We've grown up to be adults as a union. We've laughed, sung and cried together as a union. We've invested our money in renewable energy and technology together as a union. We've invested in and supported two big Scottish banks together as a union back in 2008. We fought and died together on the battlefield to protect our freedoms as a union. And we defend ourselves today against our foes as a union. And these are incredible shared positive features upon which we can go from strength to strength as a union. And to give this up would surely, sadly, diminish us all. I truly believe that the sum of the whole is worth so much more than the sum of the individual parts. And let's be honest, the decision whether to keep or to break up the union is one that would affect all 67 million people across the whole UK, not just the 5.5 million in Scotland. We've been together for over 300 years. We are bound together in so many ways. We're like a big, loving family. And the reasons we came together all those years ago are the same today as they were then. To trade freely between us, to provide financial security for all of us, and to provide military protection, again, for all of us. But an independent Scotland would be exposed, militarily weak and challenged financially. And the risk to the other 62 million UK citizens would surely be unacceptable. The risk of Scotland on our border being tempted by cheap finance and cheap technology by other less than friendly states that do not have our best interests at heart. That is a risk that we really should not ever have to contemplate. And that's our position as Reform UK on the qualities and the benefits of the Union. Now, sure, there are of course many good reasons why we should debate how the four nations of the UK are run and managed within the umbrella of the United Kingdom. Who does what and where? And there's always a need to consider how we improve the accountability, the performance and the governance of our political decisions. But if Westminster and Whitehall, or Holyrood and Victoria, if the political class can become detached from the people they are paid to serve, then we need to do better. And we've seen this magnified by the COVID crisis, with shocking levels of centralised bureaucracy that's made our response so much poorer than it should have been, than it could have been. And yes, let's have that grown-up, serious debate about what reforms will make genuine improvements, such as devolving more powers from Holyrood down to communities, but all within the context of the solidarity and the security of the United Kingdom, of all of us together. And as we face the elections, hopefully in May, across the whole of the UK, I'm really pleased to announce today the launch of our Scottish party, Reform UK Scotland. Now, Reform UK Scotland, in the spirit of devolution, of course, will have its own management board, its own staff. It'll have the autonomy to decide policy on devolved matters and to select Scottish candidates to meet the needs of Scotland. Now, I don't need to tell you there are unique and substantial challenges across the whole of the UK, including Scotland. And that's why it's imperative that we at Reform UK, we have a strong leader in Scotland who understands Scottish politics, someone who has courage, real life experience, integrity and common sense. And that's why I'm absolutely delighted that Michelle Ballantyne MSP has agreed to lead Reform UK Scotland. Michelle currently sits as an independent MSP in Holyrood, having resigned from the Scottish Party, the Scottish Conservative Party, last year. And their loss is our gain. Michelle will be taking charge of running Reform UK Scotland with immediate effect and is now with me live from Scotland. Michelle, it's great to have you with us on board. I'm so sorry for obvious reasons that I can't be with you, but thank you for being with us, and over to you.
Thank you, Richard, and I'm delighted to take the reins here in Scotland. So can I also say welcome to all the journalists who've logged on today for this virtual launch, and reflect that we started last year in the same way, talking about leadership. So different outcome for me this year. Let's hope it leads to a better year for all of us. I have no doubt that many of you will be thinking that starting a party in Scotland is a monumental task, and without a doubt it is. But politics is about people and how government affects their lives. This last year has been catastrophic for many people. COVID-19 has been the worst virus most of us have ever known, and it's left many families grieving for loved ones. Entrepreneurs have seen their life's work ruined, and thousands have lost their jobs. And our children face uncertain futures as schools are shut again and mental health problems multiply. Now, as the UK government has borrowed to mitigate the consequences of the COVID strategy, the unanswered questions remain as to how this is going to be paid for. While the Scottish government has made its priority harnessing the misery of the pandemic to force a constitutional vote. Scotland needs an exit strategy, not just out of COVID, but to recover from lockdowns. Children need to get back to school, and healthcare needs to be fully open, and human beings need to be able to interact socially. But we must not forget that even before COVID struck, there were deep-rooted problems within the public sector services in Scotland. Here are a few reminders. Curriculum for excellence with falling standards. The Edinburgh Sick Kids Hospital that didn't open when it was supposed to. NHS waiting times targets missed. BIFAB, Ferguson Shipyards, Prestwick Airport, the government getting involved in the private sector with no idea what they're doing. It is clear to many of us that government and service delivery in Scotland needs reforming. So what does Reform Scotland stand for? We are pro-Scotland and pro the UK because we believe it is simply the best choice for the people of these islands. Why? Because it is the most successful union ever created. It has served us well for over 300 years, and never so well as it has in the last few months, as the combined power of the union has brought us financial aid and the first and fastest vaccination programme in Europe. I would like to personally thank the scientists at Oxford for their incredible success, and indeed the government for believing in them. We will make the positive case for the union. But I would also say to those who dream of an independent Scotland that without an economically strong base and a public sector that is both affordable and effective, your dream will deliver chaos to the things that we all value. Unionists and nationalists can and must come together now for the shared goal of rebuilding Scotland. Reform UK Scotland will champion personal choice, it will champion community response, and it will champion local networks. Our policies will reflect these values and respect the basic rights of freedom of thought, speech, and worship. Naturally, we are pro-reform. It's in our name. But we will bring forward policies to reform and restore the reputation of our education system. Policies that value our teachers and put aspiration and outcomes for all our children as a priority. With over 30 years personal experience in the health sector, I will lead a party that speaks honestly about how we can improve health outcomes by changing our emphasis to prevention. We currently spend around 60% of our GDP on public services. Clearly, this is not sustainable and will have to be addressed if we want to maintain and improve services. We therefore have to build the wealth-creating sector of Scotland. That means creating an environment that attracts and encourages entrepreneurs. I have first-hand experience of building a manufacturing business from scratch. I understand the challenges of growing a business and providing stable employment. Reform will be the champion for those who want to succeed. We want to build a Scotland that cheers success and values wealth creation because it allows us to deliver high-quality services to our people. And yes, with our pedigree, we are unashamedly the party that will seize the positive opportunities that arise from leaving the EU. In doing so, we will show how trading with our EU friends as good neighbours and believing in our own abilities to set standards and do what is right for the environment will benefit Scotland. We will not promise you undeliverable or unaffordable inducements to vote for us. We will bring forward a range of policies and proposals over the next few months that will be based on delivering workable solutions to the problems we face. Now, I've been in the job now for about 10 minutes, probably a bit longer if you count the setting this up, but I'm going to take a few questions and I'm happy to do so, and I will endeavour to give you meaningful answers. So I really thank you for your time this morning, and I hope you've got some great questions for me. Richard, back to you.
Thank you, Michelle. It's great to have you on board working with us, and we're really excited about what we can do together. So now it's time for some questions from journalists across the UK and in Scotland, either of myself or probably much more likely of Michelle. And the first question is from the Scotsman, where we've got Scott McNabb. Scott, good morning, welcome. What's your question?
Yeah, good morning. It's a question for Michelle, please. You talked to Michelle about the benefits of the union. What do you say to the fact, though, that over the past year, that's throughout 2020 consistently, we've seen that a clear majority of Scots now favour independence? Is it not time for a second referendum to try and decide this issue?
Thank you, Scott. No, I don't think it's time for a referendum. We had a very decisive referendum back in 2014. But I also think if you scratch under the polling, it doesn't tell you quite what it's presented as, because that is only the people that answered positively and has assumed that those were included. So no, I think we've got a lot of work to do now. We've been in a terrible pandemic. There's been massive impact on our economy. This is not the time to be even thinking about a referendum. And that's why I said in my speech, it's time for us to come together to rebuild Scotland. You know, once we've done that, once Scotland is sound and solid and stable, and, you know, if they want to come back and talk about it, then fine. But now is absolutely not the time.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Scott. And then secondly, we've got an email which has come in from Liz Green, which says, will you have a full manifesto for Scotland? So, Michelle, that's one for you.
Yes, absolutely. I don't believe you can go to the people without being very clear about what you're standing for. I think it's equally important that manifesto is costed. So not only will we have a manifesto, we will have a budget that sits alongside it to basically evidence that we can do what we say we want to do.
Great. Thank you, Michelle. And then next I'm going to Daniel Sanderson for your question. Hopefully we might be losing Daniel.
Hi, I'm here, if you can hear me.
Excellent, Daniel. I can hear you. I can't see you, but Daniel...
Sorry, I've got my video on. Anyway...
what's your question, Daniel? Great.
Michelle, if that's okay. Just interested in how much you plan to stand on a sort of anti-lockdown, getting kids back to school platform. You know, how prominent will that be in your campaign? And is that something you feel will differentiate yourselves from the Scottish Tories?
Right. Well, I think if you followed what I've been saying all along from the outset of the pandemic, I have always believed that we should have perhaps taken a different approach. I am a supporter of the Great Barrington Declaration. I believe we should have protected the vulnerable and allowed much of the economy to go forward. If you look at the amount that has been spent on dealing with the pandemic, we could have provided well-funded, supported, closed communities to protect our vulnerable citizens. You can see quite clearly that lockdown hasn't worked. The manner in which viruses behave has meant that we lost more people this week from the virus than we did last April. So I think we do need to start thinking, but it's no good harking on about what's been done. What we need to do is look at how we go from here and how we get out of this lockdown situation. Now, the vaccine clearly has added to the hope, and we're all extremely grateful that the government has managed to get vaccines into the UK quicker than anywhere else. And it does give us an element of moving forward. But yes, I will be speaking, as I have been all along, about the fact that the collateral damage that has been done as a result of the decisions that have been made to manage COVID are far, far greater than the damage of COVID. And I think that when you look at the fact that we have, in a sense, classed education as non-essential, that really broke my heart. Because once we say education is non-essential, we're saying that how we manage our youngsters, the future we're offering them, is not essential. I just don't believe that. And for me, that was a real turning point in this discussion.
Thank you, Michelle, and I support all of that. I just want to add, on the lockdown, it is causing untold misery and human suffering to so many millions. And of course, it's really difficult. It's not easy balancing these judgments, but we are going to have to learn to live with it. It's here with us forever. The virus will continue to mutate. We'll have to tweak the vaccine, no doubt. You can't eliminate it. It's with us forever, and we've got to learn to live with it in the same way that we learn to live with the flu, and the flu vaccine gets tweaked every year. So now we move to an email from Pete Smith, which says, are you seriously going to stand in Scotland, or is there no chance of you standing down as you did in the general election? Well, Michelle, over to you on that one.
Yes, we're seriously going to stand. Otherwise, we're going to a lot of trouble for nothing. I think the reality is that here in Scotland, I can't speak for the rest of the UK, obviously, but here in Scotland, we are absolutely serious about having a robust manifesto, a robust budget, and a really good set of candidates to take the message to our electorate. There's a lot of people out there who feel their voices aren't being listened to, that they have had no space. I was one of them. Both as a Brexiteer, I felt that I was continually called names, got at, and then as somebody who said, hang on a minute, is this really the best way to cope with COVID? And that's before you even start looking at all the failures we've seen in Scotland. So this is not a game. This is very, very serious. And, the candidates that have been coming forward for us, and the ones that I hope we'll hear, now we're alive and running, these are people, we're looking for people who know what they're talking about, people with experience of life, people who can bring real solutions to real problems, not career politicians. So, this is a chance for those of you who've been banging the drum, who are angry about what's going on, who think they can make a difference for their country, to come forward.
Thank you, Michelle. That's fantastic. And I would just like to reinforce, we've already had candidates apply, and this is without question, unashamedly, a massive marketing pitch. Anybody who wants to stand in Scotland, please apply. Put your names forward. Don't be afraid. This is a great opportunity to help serve Scotland, to make things better for Scotland. So thank you for that. And we're trying to find, I think, Peter McNann. Peter, hi, are you with us? Good morning to you. Can you hear us, Peter? Hopefully you can. Are you with us? We're with you, Peter, but you may not be with us. He's looking a little anxiously at the screen. Well, we've lost Peter. We'll come back to Peter. He'll still get his chance. Let's take an email from Jacinda, which says, what are you going to do about fishing and about the fishing sellout in the Brexit deal negotiated by the Prime Minister? So, Michelle, please, your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, clearly, I was disappointed by the approach in the deal for fisheries, but let's not be too downhearted, okay? The Prime Minister didn't do an entirely bad deal. We have got control of our waters, and actually we have the opportunity to change those quotas. I've been doing quite a lot of work on this with a friend who knows an awful lot about fishing. And we think there are ways forward to make sure that Scotland get that control that they need over their fisheries, and to make sure that we benefit from our own waters. And I, for one, will certainly be fighting hard to make sure that we end up with what we expected at the outset. The doors aren't closed, and anybody who is standing there saying that it's all over, they're absolutely wrong. The opportunities are there in the deal, and I believe we can get a good outcome as we go forward.
Thank you, Michelle. And now we go to Brian Monteith. Hopefully, there's Brian. Brian, your question, please. Good morning to you.
Well, good morning. I was wondering if Michelle could actually tell me what she thinks about the possibility that there won't be any elections, and whether or not she will ensure that if they are postponed, there will be a campaign throughout the period running up to when they eventually do happen.
Well, first of all, I would say this is another worrying casualty of the decisions around COVID, in that it's becoming increasingly likely that elections will have to be postponed. I hope they won't. I hope that we do move on with it. This is part of our democratic system. And for many people, the opportunity to make decisions around who represents them and who is the government are really important. So, you know, we'll see how it goes. But yes, I mean, if they are delayed, and we've already put the bill through Parliament in Holyrood to allow that to happen, and there are, you know, rigorous controls about what must happen if that decision is made. But I hope they will absolutely take place this year. And I think it is extremely important that we do all keep campaigning. And I think if you think about it, that there is a degree of a challenge on democracy at the moment, because a lot of the parties have found it extremely difficult to reach the electorate during this COVID pandemic. The SNP have really had centre stage. They've had the freedom to push their messaging. They've had been on the television every single day. So I know there's a worry about that democratic deficit, but I still think it's important that we have the elections, if we can, when they're scheduled.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Brian. I would just like to add to that. I mean, you know, we've had our liberties taken away this year. Freedom of speech is seriously under threat. And the idea now that political leaders and governments across the UK would take away the ballot box, take away democracy, I think is appalling. They can say they're postponing it. I just think it would be completely wrong. Maybe they're actually afraid of what the message that voters might give to them. So next we've got an email from Sally Brown. Sally says, I'm fed up with the two main parties. What hope can you offer? Well, Reform UK, we can offer hope across the whole of the UK, but Michelle will talk specifically, please, about Scotland.
Yeah, I mean, what we're going to do, and I hope if you're interested, you'll follow this over the next few months, we will be putting policies that we believe will really make a difference in Scotland. This is about improving standards. This is about ensuring that every penny of the taxes you pay gets used to improve the lives of people in Scotland. I'm known for some of my fairly blunt speaking. You know, I say what I think. And I hope I can continue to do that, because we have got trapped in politics in a lot of fairly woke speak, trying to sort of pander to people. But actually, at the end of the day, what really matters is what happens to you as an individual on the ground in your life. You know, can you get a job? You know, are you paid enough? Do your children get the education they deserve? Is the health system there for you when you need it? Is there a net to catch you and help you back up when things are difficult for you or when things go wrong? You know, are the basic services on the street delivered well? So these are the things we're going to be really focusing on. And I can tell you one thing, what we're not going to focus on is the idea of secession. You know, we're not going to spend hours and hours talking about the constitutional arguments, because actually those are the least important thing in people's lives right now. You need to have your lives well cared for. And if you want to talk about independence and secession, do it later. Do it when the country's on its feet, because right now there are some fairly major problems that we need to sort out. And that's what I'm going to focus on. That's what the people in this party are going to focus on. And if you're interested in that, if you want to make Scotland a better place for everybody, then come and talk to us. Come and help us do that. Because we may not be running the country in a year's time, but we can help influence everything that's thought about and said. So let's do that.
Thank you, Michelle. And across the whole of the UK, that's about the application of common sense so that our public services are run better, more efficiently for the people. Thank you for that. And then next we're going to Edward Plantagenet, hopefully, who's on the screen. You look as though you're in Barbados, Edward, but who knows? Good morning, welcome. What's your question, please? I can't hear you. You must be on mute, or it's a bit windy wherever you are. We can't hear you, Edward. Oh, that's better.
Sorry, I hadn't actually logged in to ask a question. I was just listening to hear.
Oh, fine. Well, you're very welcome. Is there a burning question, or shall I move on?
I think move on.
Lovely. Well, nice to have you with us. Thank you. We've got an email. We've got an email from Peter. Peter from the Borders. How do we think Brexit will benefit Scotland? Michelle, how do we think Brexit will benefit Scotland?
Well, first of all, Peter, and thank you for that. I think it's the same question you've asked me on numerous occasions over the last few years. Look, I believe that actually we can trade extremely well with the EU as our neighbours, and I think the EU now agree that. We've got to deal with them. What we don't need to do is actually be run by the EU. Because when you try to run so many countries in the centre, you're making the decision that suits probably the biggest ones at any given time. You know, we in the UK have always been extremely good in terms of making decisions, getting high standards, trading with the world. And in Scotland, only 17% of our trade actually goes to the EU. So this is an opportunity now to make sure that our regulation, our state support rules, the manner in which we relate to other countries are all designed to benefit us, not to benefit 27 other countries. And this is what we need to do. And I actually think as we go forward, people will start to understand how that works and how that can work very well. We also have the chance to do things, even simple things. Look at VAT on fuel. You know, at the moment, we're subject to regulations that actually make it difficult for our people. You know, we're a cold country, and having to pay more for your heating fuel in your house really matters. So these are the sort of things we can look to address now. So there are lots and lots and lots of things. And actually what we need now is a government that's positive about it and seeks those benefits rather than whinging and finding grievance with what's gone on before. So yeah, I will be working to that, and I will be starting to push out those benefits that I think we can achieve. And I hope you and the media and everybody else out there will start to say, right, we've left the EU now, how are we going to make this work? What are the things that we can do that can benefit us all? Because there are lots of them.
Thank you, Michelle. And of course, Brexit's already benefiting not only Scotland, but the whole of the UK. The vaccine. We got the vaccine so much earlier because we'd left the European Union. And so people in Scotland are benefiting. The vulnerable who need that vaccine first are already benefiting thanks to that and thanks to our scientists, but also thanks to Brexit. So next we go to Terry Murden. I think I can see you there on the screen, Terry. Good morning, welcome. What's your question to Michelle, please? I assume it's Michelle.
Yes, good morning to you. You've got a new name, but you're still going to be associated with the whole Brexit thing, which the Scots have obviously roundly rejected. What are you going to offer that is so much different? I'm looking for the silver bullet here. You've said a lot of things that, frankly, I've heard from every party. There's nothing that seems to be standing out. So what are you going to do that's really going to capture people's imagination in what is only a few weeks before an election? Otherwise, maybe the other parties were just going to cast you as irrelevant.
No, that's a great question. Michelle, over to you first to answer that question from Terry, and then I may add something.
Yes, and I totally understand your point, but you have to understand that actually we are forming in Scotland, we are forming in order to actually start putting forward the alternatives to the suggestions that have been made already. You've made a very good point. Most of the other parties are pretty much in unison on a lot of things. We actually want to say, hang on, there is a different way to do this. And we're going to lay that out over the next few weeks. You will see all our policies coming out, and then you can judge whether or not you think we're going about this slightly differently, whether we have something different to say about how to manage education, how to manage health, the things that we think need doing in order to take the country forward. Today is not the day for me to lay those all out, clearly. I'm literally, as I said, only come into the job this morning, but I hope you will see those thoughts coming through very strongly over the next few weeks.
Thank you, Michelle, and thank you, Terry, for that. And that will be the same across the whole of the UK. We'll be laying forward our thoughts about better ways that we can use common sense to reform the way that our country is run, managed and governed, so that the public services work better for all of us, more efficiently, faster. That is what is so important. And then finally, we've just got an email here from Margaret, which says, would you take the COVID vaccine? Well, I'll answer that first. Yes, absolutely. Vaccines, throughout history have been fantastic for all of us. So yes, I will take the vaccine when it's my turn in the queue, and I'll ask Michelle as well.
Yes, when it comes to me, certainly. I think it is important, though, that it's not just about taking the vaccine, and I say this very clearly. We have to have a route out of lockdown that is more than just about taking a vaccine, because, as Richard mentioned earlier, COVID isn't going to go away. There will be other strains, and what I don't want to see next year is when the next strain of a flu or a COVID virus comes along, we go back into the same cycle, that this doesn't become a precedent as to how we deal with the January, February problems that we have every year with different viruses that particularly affect older people. So I think we need to have a much wider debate about how we're going to manage this going forward.
That's the point. Thank you, Michelle. It is so important. We all have to understand and appreciate that this virus, we can't eliminate it. The vaccine doesn't get rid of it. It helps reduce the symptoms and hopefully reduce the number of the tragic deaths. But it's with us forever, and we have to learn to live with it and to adapt and to understand it. And the vaccines will, without question, no doubt have to be tweaked as the virus mutates. So I think that brings us to the end. I'd just like to say a huge thank you to all those who've been watching, to the journalists for their questions. And just before we finish, Michelle, any final words reflecting just on this morning, and any other thoughts?
Yes, I think I want people out there to understand that when you have political parties, we have to actually have a joined up system of policies. It's no good just having soundbite policies that fly into the air, sit very nicely as an offer of a freebie or an offer of something that sounds great. We're going to have thousands more of this or less of that. What you have to have is policies that actually make sense when you put them all together. So the one thing I'm going to leave you with is around taxation. We are going to commit as a party to ensure that we never have taxation that is higher than the rest of the UK. And that is not, as some people immediately say, oh, it's only about the wealthy. It is about ensuring that we can attract the best people and keep the best people so that we have the best services in Scotland. So I hope you'll go to our website. I hope you'll watch and listen and look at what we're doing as the time goes on, because I hope you'll see that we are going to offer you something a little bit different, something that you can consider and think about, and that will actually make Scotland a much, much better place. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Michelle. It really is great to have you on board leading Reform UK Scotland, and it's a very exciting future. So thank you again to all of you who've been watching. It's going to be a very exciting year. Hopefully there'll be elections in May. So it'll be an exciting year for Reform UK and, vitally, Reform UK Scotland. And as we move together, as we move forward, our mission is absolutely clear. It's as it's always been. Let's change politics for good. Thank you very much.